I'm Erin Hayes, 34 years old, born and raised in Boulder, Colorado. I used to be a pilot. Not just any pilot, a military one. Call sign, Spectre. It used to mean something. Now it's just a whisper. I don't say out loud. Just another word tucked between the pages of my black notebook. They told me I was unstable. Not unskilled. Not unfit. Unstable. Like a flickering light that might short out during a storm. A threat. Not to the mission, but to perception. So I left. Not because I was broken, but because staying would have broken me. The uniform is gone now. The boots sit in a box beneath my bed. But the habits remain. Precision. Silence. The need to record everything. Every thought. Every calculation. Every wrong look. Like proof that I still exist and that I still matter. The letter came 2 weeks ago. My father was gone. Heart failure, they said. Quick. Quiet. I didn't cry. I waited. Then I packed a bag and a notebook, and now, here I am. On a flight to Ohio. Row 16, seat B, the middle seat. Of course, he's in seat C, Daniel. My older brother. Polished. Perfect. Wearing a crisp white shirt and that same smug expression that's followed him since high school. He's the kind of man who makes a room feel smaller just by entering it. He didn't say hello when I sat down. Just looked at me, scanned me, and offered a thin smile. Didn't think you'd show, he said, like I was late to something I never wanted to attend. I wasn't coming for him, I said. I was coming to make sure someone else wasn't rewriting the story. His laugh, short, dismissive. Still keeping score, huh? I didn't answer. Instead, I opened my notebook and drew a single black line across the page, just to mark the moment. I can feel the tension between us, thick like humidity before a storm. He knows what happened, what they said about me, and I know what he's done since. The interviews, the inheritance talk, the way he took control the second Dad's heart stopped. And yet here we are, elbow to elbow, forced into proximity by the cheapest flight I could find. Still flying? He asks suddenly, eyes on the in-flight magazine like he doesn't care about the answer. No, I say, just floating. A pause. Then, funny, you used to think flying meant freedom. I grip the edge of the armrest. Not hard, just enough to remember it's real. Freedom means knowing when to land. He chuckles again, condescending, and leans back, like he's won. Sure, if you're comfortable being a passenger. I turn my head toward the window. The clouds are layered in soft gold, the kind of sky that promises peace, but never guarantees it. He thinks I'm passive, detached, maybe even scared. What he doesn't know is that I've already fought 1,000 battles, and none of them required a cockpit. The seatbelt sign dings on. Light turbulence. A voice crackles from the intercom, too muffled to make out clearly. Daniel keeps talking. Something about the estate, the house, what to do with the car. I stop listening. My hand moves over the paper, unconsciously sketching the wing of the aircraft, line by line, edge by edge, until it's perfect. There's a low hum in the air, a subtle shift. You learn to hear it before you see it. The change in engine tone, the way metal tenses before it groans. And then, a bang. Not loud, not earth-shattering, but precise. Deep. The kind of sound that doesn't echo. It lands. Passengers jerk in their seats. A woman in 15A gasps audibly. Someone up front presses the call button. Daniel's head tilts, curious, not concerned. That normal? He asks. I don't answer. My heart has already adjusted its rhythm. Another sound, this time sharper. The lights flicker once, then hold. The captain's voice comes on again, clearer now, but controlled. Too controlled. Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing a technical issue. Please remain seated and keep your seatbelts fastened. I close the notebook. Not in panic. In preparation. Daniel shifts beside me, still calm but less smug. Think it's serious? I look at him. Really look. For the first time in years. And I realize he's never actually seen fear. Not real fear. Not the kind that visits you at 40,000 feet. I answer softly. Depends on whether the second engine holds. He stares at me, something flickering in his eyes. Recognition? Doubt? Regret? He opens his mouth, maybe to challenge, maybe to ask more. But then the plane drops. Just for a second. A quick lurch. Enough to remind everyone on board that the sky doesn't care about your status. People scream. Luggage shifts. A coffee cup hits the aisle. And then the voice from the cockpit again. This time, not the captain. A different voice. Urgent. Younger. We're requesting any available assistance from credentialed personnel. Repeat. If Spectre is on board, please identify immediately. I freeze. The word slices through me. It shouldn't be possible. No one on this flight should know that name. Beside me, Daniel blinks. What the hell is Spectre? I don't answer him, because the next moment has already begun, and I am no longer just a passenger. The air inside the cabin changed. You could almost feel it tighten, press inward, not from altitude, but from something less measurable. Fear, confusion, the subtle awareness that something was happening outside the script. The murmurs began around row 10. Someone unbuckled their seatbelt, then fastened it again without standing. A woman whispered prayers into her hands. A flight attendant hurried past, trying to look calm and failing, and then came the second call. If Spectre is on this aircraft, please respond. The voice wasn't the captain's, younger, shaken but trying to stay composed. I knew that voice, not the person, the type. Young officer, probably a co-pilot, trained to follow procedure until the procedure breaks down. Then you fall back on instinct. If you have any. Daniel was staring at me now, frowning. Did they say your name? No, I said, though the heat in my chest said otherwise. You were Spectre. That's you. They're talking about you. I ignored him, unbuckled my belt. Stood slowly. You can't seriously. Erin, you don't even fly anymore. The plane jolted again, harder this time. Several people screamed. Overhead bins popped open. An oxygen mask dropped in row 7 but didn't unfurl. And that was when the panic started to settle in for real. The kind that's quiet at first. An eerie hush where everyone tries to pretend it's still fine, because once it isn't, you can't go back. I'm going, I said. To what? Daniel scoffed, rising halfway from his seat to block me. Play hero? My eyes locked on his. To fly. He reached out and grabbed my arm. It wasn't forceful. It was desperate. You haven't been in a cockpit in years. But I never left it, I whispered, and I pulled away. Every step up the aisle felt like stepping deeper into something I didn't name yet. Not redemption, not return, just necessary. People looked up as I passed, some with hope, others with raw disbelief. No one stood in my way. When I reached the front of the plane, a flight attendant stopped me. Ma'am, passengers must stay seated. I was requested, I said. Spectre. Her mouth fell open slightly, then she reached for the intercom and said something I couldn't hear. The cockpit door opened with a hiss and click. A man stepped out, the captain. Mid-50s, tired eyes, calm under fire. His name tag read, M. Alvarez. Hayes? He asked. I nodded. He looked me over. Not like Daniel had. Not with skepticism, but with calculation. You flew with the 161st out of Tyndall? Yes. Combat hours? 3,000 and change, mostly in F-15s. 2 combat tours, 4 emergency landings. Sim experience with commercial-grade hydraulics? Enough to know what this plane won't do right now. He stepped aside. Then let's find out what it can do. The door shut behind me. Inside, the co-pilot, early 30s, sweat on his brow, gave me a look of pure relief and slid out of his seat. "She's all yours, ma'am." I didn't hesitate. My body remembered before my mind did. Hands on controls, eyes scanning the limited readouts. One engine dead. The other? Coughing, starving, altitude dropping, instruments blinking in chaotic rhythm, no autopilot, no auto throttle, manual everything. I ran diagnostics aloud as I checked them, not for anyone else's benefit, but to anchor myself. Alvarez pointed at the maps. "We're too far from any major airport. We need to find something short and flat." I nodded. "Pull satellite overlays, agricultural zones, decommissioned military strips." He blinked. "You think you can land this on—" "I don't think, Captain. I calculate. And we've got about 12 minutes before we run out of both options and sky." I worked. He worked. And we didn't speak again for 3 minutes, which in an emergency might as well be an hour. Finally, we found it. An abandoned airstrip, once used for wildfire patrols. Cracked tarmac. No lighting. Wind unpredictable. But it was long enough. I called it. We aim for it. Left roll, 30 degrees. Flaps. Manual override. I'll handle descent. You monitor stabilizers. He didn't argue, just followed. And then I felt it. That shift. That silence before action, like the seconds before the first shot is fired in a battle. Only this time, the shot was inside me. It was quiet at first, a whisper of doubt. Unstable. That's what they said. What if they were right? What if you freeze? What if you fail? The plane dipped again. I gripped the controls tighter. My pulse was up, breathing shallow, and for exactly 4 seconds I froze. 4 seconds where I couldn't see the instruments, couldn't hear Alvarez, couldn't even feel the yoke in my hands. Just the echo of a boardroom, a desk, a voice saying, "She's not dangerous, but she's unpredictable. She's brilliant, but impulsive. We can't risk her up there." I'd held onto those words longer than I realized, but they weren't true. I blinked once, twice, and then, back. Grip tightening, vision clearing, hands flying, adjusting trim, rebalancing yaw, calling the last sequence aloud. "I've got it," I said. And I meant it. The runway came up fast, like a ghost emerging from dust. We hit the edge, wheels screaming. The cabin jolted, groaned, screamed, metal grinding, tailwind hammering us, but I kept it steady, let it skid. Guided the weight forward without breaking the structure. We stopped. Silence, and then an eruption. Cheers. Screams. Someone sobbing, but I stayed in my seat, eyes forward, breath still shallow. My hands didn't shake. Not yet. Alvarez reached over and gripped my arm, his voice quiet. "Hell of a thing, Captain Hayes." I nodded once. "It's Erin now." The relief didn't come yet. It never does right away, because even after the landing, you're still in the wreckage, and some wreckage you have to walk through on foot. The plane had stopped moving, but everything inside me was still spinning, not panic, not even adrenaline. That had already burned through. What remained was sharp, cold clarity, the kind that comes after survival, when the silence is louder than the screams. I didn't unbuckle right away. Neither did Captain Alvarez. We sat there, hands resting on our laps, breathing in what was left of the moment. The fragile space between disaster and aftermath. Outside the windshield, dust hovered like fog. The cracked asphalt of the abandoned strip stretched out before us, sun-warped and broken in places. No tower, no tarmac crew, just weeds and silence, and behind us, 200 people still didn't know exactly what had just saved them. The first knock came on the cockpit door, a flight attendant's voice, shaking but steady. They want to know if they're safe. I stood. My knees didn't buckle. That surprised me. I opened the door. Faces turned, dozens of them, some crying, some frozen, all of them watching me like I was someone I hadn't been in years. A teenage girl near the front clapped, unsure at first, then louder. Others joined in. There was applause. Some even stood. But I didn't raise my hand. Didn't bow. I wasn't here to be a symbol. I was just trying to land. Daniel was standing now, just past row 12, looking at me with something unfamiliar in his face. Not awe, not gratitude, something smaller, something unsettled. I walked past him without stopping. He followed. The passengers were guided off the plane in slow, dusty waves. Emergency vehicles eventually arrived, sirens wailing through nowhere. By the time I reached the makeshift triage area near the end of the runway, media had already started to gather. Someone must have posted a video, probably several. Phones were pointed at me, voices shouted questions, reporters with fake smiles and expensive microphones asked how it felt to save lives. I said nothing, just kept walking, but the story moved faster than I did. By the time I reached the temporary shelter near the county road, my name was already on the news crawl beneath a live aerial shot of the grounded plane. Former military pilot Erin saves 200 in emergency landing. Spectre returns, hero or liability. Hayes cleared in 2019. Mental health review, but is the military to blame? I sat on a folding chair, silent, while paramedics checked my vitals. They said I was fine. I didn't believe them. I looked over at the passengers, people who were alive because I hadn't stayed in my seat. And still, part of me whispered, "You shouldn't have been up there." It didn't take long for the vultures to circle. The press, the officials, the whisper campaigns. 2 days later, I was flown to DC under the pretense of debriefing. It wasn't a debrief, it was an investigation. Behind closed doors, they slid a file across the table. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. I knew what it was. The report. The one that ended my career. "You were never formally discharged for psychiatric reasons," one of the men said, flipping pages like a bored librarian. "But this report raises serious questions, given your recent actions." "My actions saved a plane," I interrupted. Calm, clear. "Your report buried a pilot." They didn't like that. The room grew cold. The words sharper. Questions about procedure, about timing, about those 4 seconds of silence before touchdown. Someone must have mentioned it. Maybe a data read. Maybe a passenger. Maybe Daniel. They wanted doubt. But I had something else. I reached into my bag, pulled out the black notebook. I recorded every adjustment, every calculation, every malfunction, from memory and from feel. "Here," I said, sliding it forward. "You'll find exact timestamps, pressure metrics, wind compensation ratios, even electrical drop estimates. I wrote them within minutes of the landing, before the ambulance even came." One of the men raised an eyebrow. "You expect us to take notes over diagnostics?" I looked at him, and for a long moment, I didn't blink. "No," I said. "You'll take the black box over notes, and when it matches what I wrote, word for word, you'll have no choice." They did. The recordings confirmed everything. The flight crew backed me. Captain Alvarez wrote an official commendation, and yet, the leak still happened. That psychological report, the one supposedly sealed years ago, it hit the press within 24 hours. Not by accident, it was strategic, personal, precise, and it traced back to a law firm in Chicago, one where my brother had deep, comfortable ties. The betrayal wasn't shocking. What shocked me was how unsurprised I felt. When I confronted him, he didn't deny it. We met on a bench outside the courthouse. He was dressed in a tailored suit, as if he'd walked straight out of a campaign ad. He didn't stand when I approached. "I thought you wanted to disappear," he said. "You're the one who left. You were done." I sat beside him. "I left because you helped push me, because you didn't believe I belonged there." He didn't respond, just watched traffic pass beyond the gate. I waited. Let the silence stretch. Finally, he spoke. "Do you remember that night Dad got the call? The one about your commendation?" I did. "You were overseas," he cried. First time I ever saw him cry, he said he'd never been prouder. Daniel swallowed hard. I was right there. I was doing everything. Law school, promotions, all of it. But he never said that about me. I stared at him, not angry, just tired. "So you punished me?" "I didn't mean to. I didn't want you to win again." It was the most honest thing he'd ever said to me. He turned to me then. And for once, there was no performance in his face. Just regret. "I'm sorry," he said. I didn't say I forgave him. Not right away. Because forgiveness isn't a reward. It's a release. And I needed to let go of the weight he'd hung around my neck. So I looked him in the eye and said, "I forgive you, but not for you. For me." He nodded. That was enough. Later, they offered me my old rank back, even a command post. But I declined. Not because I couldn't return, but because I'd already landed where I needed to be. The world moved on. It always does. A week after the landing, the headlines faded. News cycles reset. Another disaster, another scandal, another shiny thing to chase. But I stayed still, not lost, not hiding, just listening. Sometimes the loudest things in your life only become clear when the noise dies down. They asked me to return. The military, the flight academy. Even a documentary team from some streaming service wanted to follow me around for a year. I said no. Not out of bitterness. Not pride. But because I wasn't supposed to go back. I was supposed to go forward. That began quietly, in a classroom. Not a military base. A small airfield outside Denver. Civilian.modest. Real.old planes, chipped paint, engines that coughed before they roared. The kind of place where flying wasn't about pride or medals or proving anything. It was about remembering what it means to trust the sky again. That's where I met him. Ethan.19. Nervous. Thin. The kind of kid who didn't make eye contact unless he had to. He walked up to me one afternoon after class. Everyone else had gone. He looked like he'd been working up to it for days. "You were on that flight," he said. "The emergency one." I was in row 22. I remembered him. He'd been one of the calm ones. Wide eyes, yes, but steady hands. He had helped an elderly woman unbuckle her seatbelt when we landed. "I've been trying to fly ever since," he said. "Not just learn how. I mean, actually do it." "Why?" I asked. He shrugged, looked away. Then finally, "Because I want to be the kind of person who doesn't freeze when everything falls apart." That hit deeper than he knew. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I pulled out my notebook. Still black. Still filled with tiny slashes of ink and margin notes no one else could decipher, and I handed it to him. "Pick one," I said. He looked confused. "One page," I explained. "One maneuver, one crisis. I'll teach it to you like I lived it, not from a book, from the inside out." He opened to a page dated 5 years earlier. The time I lost radar in a night storm over the Baltic. That was our first lesson. More followed. Weeks passed. Then months. We flew often. Not far. Not high. But real. Ethan stopped looking at the ground when he walked. His voice gained weight. He asked questions that scared him, and then answered them. He wasn't trying to become me. He was becoming himself. And that was the point. I started with him. Then another. then a group. Not cadets, not soldiers, just people who wanted to learn how to keep control when the ground disappears beneath them. It wasn't about flying. It never really was. It was about the 4 seconds. The moment between control and chaos. The breath between falling and rising. The silence where you decide who you are. I teach people to survive there. Not because I'm the best. Not because I need to prove something. But because I remember what it feels like to believe you've lost yourself. And I know what it means to come back. Sometimes Ethan still asks me why I don't go back to the military, why I don't wear the medals, why I keep flying beat-up planes in the middle of nowhere. I always smile, because this is the only place where no one asks me to be anything but present. The sky is different now, not safer, not simpler, just known. I still keep the notebook, still write everything down, still draw the angles of wings in coffee shops and whisper checklists to myself in the car. But I'm not Spectre anymore. That name belonged to the woman who needed to disappear to survive. Now I'm just Erin, and that's enough. Sometimes I go back to that runway, the one where everything almost ended. Grass grows through the cracks now. The tire marks are still faintly visible. Mine, stretching across the broken tarmac like a scar. I don't touch them. I don't photograph them. I just stand there and breathe. Not to relive it, but to remind myself we don't get to choose the fall, but we do get to choose the landing. Sometimes life doesn't crash all at once. Sometimes it breaks quietly, piece by piece, until one day you realize you've been surviving, not living. But even in those moments, when you lose your place, your purpose, or even your name, there's always a choice. To stand up, to keep your hands steady, to stay human. No matter what they say about you, no matter how heavy the silence gets. This was my story, but maybe it sounded a little like yours too. If it did, subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and leave a comment. I want to know your thoughts. I want to hear your voice. There are many more stories ahead, real stories, about ordinary people who faced impossible things, loss, betrayal, redemption, and the strength to keep going anyway. Because sometimes, the people who go through the hardest things are the ones who teach us how to fly again. Thanks for watching. And remember, it's not about how far you fall, it's about how you land.